Hello, and we have one more random contemplation lined up today with Manoj and Roopa. Uh, we're still waiting for the fourth guest. He's been caught up with things, and we shall keep exploring different topics. And today, uh, first of all, welcome to the show. I'm
Thank you.
glad to reconnect with you all. Hi, Roopa. Hi, Manoj.
Hi, hi.
Hey, thanks for having us here.
Uh, I've been thinking, अगर ऐसा कुछ नया टॉपिक किया जाए where we simplify the complicated is what is running in my head. Jahan we keep receiving so much information from the internet, which is technology based. So many subjects are being covered. In fact, funnily enough, a couple of minutes back, I was seeing some reel where this guy was talking about a study done in Ethiopia many years back,
Okay.
where uh, they decided to make one group of students learn the native language from kindergarten to fourth and then switch over to English medium.
Okay.
And the others would be taught English from the word go. And they found that a lot of factors, including attendance, interest in the subject, increased when it was taught in the medium that they were comfortable with.
Okay.
So that's where the reel stopped. But it set me thinking, how do we इतना सारा information आ रहा है सब जगह से मतलब everywhere you look, you're being talked about 5G and this technology, that technology. uh, Sometimes I want to do something with stocks and I listen to a lot of jargon coming from friends, well meaning, they try to make me understand. Or even my kid who tries to tell me accounts and I say no, this is jargon, how do you simplify this? So there is, एक डर सा लगता है, इंटिमिडेट हो जाते हैं कि यार ये हाउ डू वी डील विद दिस सब्जेक्ट. Manoj, you want to go first on this? How do you see, how can one simplify the whatever one is doing in life? So starting with language, कुछ इसके बारे में thoughts.
So when you were sharing the story of that African place, what occurred to me was how our mother tongue is something that when we converse, when we start learning that language, it comes to us naturally. We
Hmm.
don't really learn grammar, but we still tend to be grammatically correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we speak our mother tongue, how many of us know the grammar of our mother tongue? Especially in a country like India, which is so varied and so many different languages. You
Correct.
ask any of your friends, whether they are, Gujarati or Tamilians or Telugu or Malayalis or, Bengalis, you ask any of them, they'll not be able to explain the grammar, but they are very fluent and they don't make mistakes when it comes to grammar when their language. So I think we tend to kind of complicate when we fragment things and we try to understand the rules and stuff, and things come naturally, they are simpler. And so there's a place for, uh, complex um stuff. And there's also a place for uh, things flowing. I think when it flows, then it's simpler. And when, there is a higher, I don't know, I don't even like to use these words, but for lack of a better, way to express, a higher intelligence that operates within us, you know, um, some people call it the subconscious mind or whatever else, higher intelligence. So that kind of is there, and we don't really understand how it works. For instance, when you drive, in the beginning you're conscious of driving and you know what to do when and all that, but after a while this higher intelligence or subconscious mind takes over, and then you can do multitasking. You can talk while driving, and you don't miss a turn, or you don't know, when you know exactly when to apply the brakes or what to do and all of that. It's happening. The higher intelligence is kind of driving. You're not driving. So I guess this is what initially comes to mind. I guess let's go deeper into it. Let's see what Rupa has to say, and
Yeah.
we can go deeper into this.
There is a context to this, if I may add, Rupa, before you give, because of something that he just said. Zakir Khan, the stand-up comedian and kind of social commentator, he said a very beautiful thing on this traffic thing alone. He says there is a there is goodness in the world का एक example ये है कि so many accidents do not happen, while a few do happen, but many don't happen because we have this language between the eyes, and that you know that I'm going to go first, or
Yeah.
you are going to go first, even when there is no traffic signal working or there are no traffic cops around. So yeah, in the again, the simplicity and goodness of things, please, you can react to what Manoj has been saying.
Yeah, so I was reminded of another study.
Rupa, speak a little more louder,
sorry.
please.
Can you hear me better now?
No, a lot more.
Okay. Better? And I'm closer than
Yeah.
I am.
Check
No?
your volume if you want.
That's at the max. The mic
Okay.
is okay. Can you hear me at all, or is it?
This is a little better, but you'll have to continue speaking a little louder.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I can't imagine what is wrong. The connection is okay. Just double checking that the connection is not an issue. That should be better, hopefully.
You will have to continue speaking louder.
Yeah, you'll have to talk louder.
Okay, not wasting more time. So I was reminded of another study when you talked about the Ethiopian study. Was a Japanese one where it was an Indian family. Yes, it was an Indian family in Japan, and their son was dyslexic, so he had learning difficulties. And being in Japan, his first mode of language eventually turned out to be teaching in Japanese. So for the longest of time, he did Japanese. And when he grew older, and then he had to expose himself to picking up English, that's when they realized he had learning difficulties. So the study then goes on to say how beautiful there are the indigenous languages, the more older languages have a much more easier grasp to it. Like the pronunciations are phonetic. It's much more palatable, for a better lack of word. Whereas the more modern languages are much like English, for example, the phonetics are all over the place. You never know where the S is pronounced, where the T is pronounced, whether it's an R or an A, or it's perpetually confusing, and loads of rules to memorize. For a person with learning difficulties, turns out that the Indian languages, or the more traditional languages, the phonetic ones, ease out their issues, and they don't have as much difficulties. So something to think about, I felt. And as for simplifying the complicated, I am torn between somewhere keeping abreast with the moving times and holding on to your comfort zone. So I think it's a bit of a push and pull between that. The complication seems complicated because we are not comfortable with it. The more ease you develop with it, the more familiarity you develop with it, it doesn't seem as complicated. So that is where the simplification happens, is what I feel. So it's about being a bit more open to the changes around you in terms of language, in terms of technology, everything. Just being open to it rather than being terrified of it to begin with. That would ease you into simplifying things or embracing the change more positively, in the long term, benefiting you and people around you as well, I feel.
Interesting, because I was going to ask you a question before Manoj said that you would react to what he was talking. Interestingly, it was exactly the opposite end of the spectrum, is complication and an example of power mongering in a way. Manoj, do you think I make things complicated when I want to show you that I am in control? Or would you want to cover the ground where you said that there are places where you need to be complex and there are places where you need to be simplifying things. I don't know. You want to ponder a bit on that?
I guess we need to go deeper into why are we actually discussing this.
Okay.
Is there like a, I mean, do we see merit in simplifying something? Or do we see that simple is better than complex? Is that what we are, starting with? Is that what our assumption is? Or, is it just we say that simplifying means you will reach a larger number of people and it is more inclusive? I mean, what is it that, why are we getting into this? Because um, I think I heard Einstein or somebody had said that, like, if you can explain something in a simpler way, something of that sort, and that means you've really grasped the idea. Like, you've understood it well only if you can explain it to somebody in a manner that is very simple. Otherwise, you haven't yourself understood.
Okay.
So at the end of it, the end point of all complexity has to be simplification of something. This complexity for the sake of complexity, I think, is not what we are looking at. Anything that is complex, at the end of it, if it's not simplified, it's losing its, purpose. I think, I don't know. That's what I would say.
Okay. Do you want to cover the point that she brought up, which to me meant that if you have fears and doubts about whatever you are encountering, and that seems to be the overarching theme of your uh, trying to understand the situation, the people, or what is being taught to you, it is you who needs to unwind a little uh, or open up a little. Do you
Sure.
want to speak a little about that?
Sure. I get where she's coming from. I agree, yes, that, we need to obviously be open to, like, I think where she's coming from is that there are subject matters that seem complicated to us because we are not familiar with them. And if we are not familiar with something and therefore we find them complicated, then yes, we need to be open to, going deeper into them so that, they reveal themselves to us. Any subject that we get into, well, when we were kids in our school, computers seem to be pretty, like, complex, isn't it? Now everybody is using them. So we were open to the idea of, harnessing the power of computing. And from the times when we used to have, like, we hardly had personal computers. And then we started having computers and they became more pervasive. And then eventually we started having computers in our pockets. So, the complexity kept increasing and we went along with it. That's because it was serving a purpose in the sense that it was simplifying our lives in certain ways. And so we kind of embraced that complexity because it is simplifying our lives in many ways. This is what I feel. But you also know people who somehow never, got the hang of computers. So they still struggle with certain things and, they could never figure it out. So I don't know whether they were not open to it or they just couldn't do it for whatever reasons.
Or maybe they were plain lucky, considering the paucity of time that computers seems to have bought us. This is lovely. One of the things that is coming to my mind when I grew up, there was the concept of gearless scooters came for the first time. You had kinetic Honda, and that's the one that I remember. And it had a problem because the engine was at the back, and if you had a puncture, then you were really dead before you reached a guy who could resolve it for you. And it was, to me, it was a sign of अरे विदाउट किक कैसा गाड़ी चलाने का मतलब मजा ही नहीं है गाड़ी चलाने का मतलब I would rather have some trouble and some this changing gears and उसमें क्या ऐसा बटन स्टार्ट कर दिया तो हो गया, मैंने क्या है ये तो औरतों के लिए गाड़ी है, एंड ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ थिंग्स वर हैपनिंग. मतलब देयर वर ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ पीपल. Obviously Kinetic found a large following also
Yeah,
for
yeah,
people who were struggling with the mechanical sides.
yeah.
So Rupa, is there something like being too simple?
Um, Again, thinking about the concept of something being
Louder,
simple.
please.
So something being simple or complex, I personally think is a very individual thing. So what is simple for me is complicated for somebody else, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So considering it is so subjective, it's individual experience and exposure and ability, interest, all of that comes into play, of course. As for oversimplifying, I don't think there is something as oversimplified. It is just at what level you can relate to it, or you are comfortable with the topic or point of discussion. Otherwise, it can get as complicated as you want it to get and as simplified as you want it to get. So it's how much you engage with it to complicate or simplify it is what I would say.
Okay. This conversation is tilting towards learning a bit, so we'll keep it there only, because automatically it is not just about simplification of anything, but more about learning. So, Manoj, how much of a part does discipline and openness play in grasping anything? Can you relate to us any story or anything where you struggled a bit with any subject per se, or you put in extra effort to understand? It could also be the metaphysical stuff. Sometimes you use your intellect far too long and you don't get it, and then one day you let go, and anything at all. Is there anything that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think your interest and motivation, they play a bigger role than your openness and discipline, I feel.
Okay.
If you have interest, discipline comes, I feel, because you really want to do it. So you will, find out ways to stick to it, to do whatever it requires, to learn. I can think of an instance where when I was, back in, I think 2011, I had just taken over the company from my parent company, and uh, and I really, I was a media person. I was an advertising, and then later on in the editorial part of publishing part of the business. But I didn't really understand much on the accounting and finance. And now I was the owner of the company, so I needed to, know all of those things. But typically, what you tend to do is you rely on experts. So we had, like, a company CA who would do things. And then one fine day, I started receiving some certain demand notices from the income tax. And from what I knew, I had a good enough hold on what we are doing. So I thought this doesn't seem to be correct, because we've definitely, this demand doesn't make sense. This seems to be wrong. So I went back to my CA and he said, well, we'll check out what is the problem, but we don't understand why, because we have filed these returns or whatever, TDS returns. And he couldn't figure it out. I went to a lot of other friends, people from my previous company, real big experts, people who do deal with all of this TDS filing returns and all that day in and day out. None of them could find or tell me why this is happening. And the demand notice was something that some people said, just ignore it because you are not in the wrong, nothing will happen. If they come, nothing will happen. So I said, no, that's something, it annoys me, because every time there is an email asking me that this is the amount of money that, that IT department is asking me to pay up. And I was not comfortable. So I started getting into it myself. And finance and taxation was something that it doesn't come naturally to me. I didn't like it. But now I had a motivation that this is something I cannot accept. So I
Yeah.
started going into it. And there was a part which was most of the CAs were missing. Just that filing returns had become, online. And so there was this IT part to it. So I'm not talking about the income tax, I'm talking about the information technology part. Okay, the IT part to it, which luckily for me, because I was a bit more familiar with that aspect of the business, I started to get into it, and I finally kind of figured out what was the problem, and I resolved it. Now, this is something that it was a very complex matter. Even the most experienced CAs couldn't help me, and I
Yeah.
figured. So I think it's a matter of motivation. For me, it was, and the interest came from that motivation that I need to get that, that demand notices to stop from, coming to me. And so I decided to get into this for that reason, and I resolved it. So I think the discipline part, the openness part, all comes from
Interest.
interest, which comes from, your motivation. What is it that's really motivating you?
Yeah,
So,
this is wonderful. Um,
and by
this
the way, after that, after that, I have always filed my own ADS returns.
Oh, I know. I
After
have had
2 years.
stories like that happen to me on both sides, on the receiving end also, and on the receiving of notices for my problem was service tax at that point of time.
Okay.
I just changed my CAs. My CA said, "Oh, I thought I had paid it." I said, "Hello, this cannot happen, man. I thought, matlab kya?" Um, I agree on but there is another thing that is coming to mind. Um, how do you look at this synchronicity?
Synchronicity, yeah.
Uh, uh, things seem to fall in place when you start taking effort to learn, and sometimes it takes time, sometimes it may happen very fast. But if your interest and motivation is in place, this now brings down to the meat of what we've been trying to discuss. What is simplicity? Because sometimes this letting go while working very hard. So, for example, this morning I received a call from somebody, and so he says, I always like talking to you, and it went on for an hour. And he says, whenever you talk and you're so wise and this and that. So I said, you can mother praise me. So he says, you hope you don't mind. I said, you can praise me as much as you want. I don't believe in it anyways. Because you may think whatever you think of me, I know who I am.
Mm.
So it doesn't really. So he also started laughing and kind of cooled down a bit about the hero worship thing. But that set me thinking on what we were talking about. And every time he said something that seemed to me as attachment to something, either me or what I said, or from now on I'm going to do this. I said, don't jump into it. Just relax and see what can happen. Because what I am saying, I myself sometimes find it hard to follow. 2 days later, I may be in the same problem and I may get tense, and I am asking you not to be tense. So it doesn't work like that. You have to work deeply on anything for the understanding to work. But he said, look, I was thinking and you talked and you have all the answers to whatever my problems are. I said, yeah, but that is whatever, it happens. And you cannot, just because you are good things are going to happen to you on the same day and you are going to feel very good about it. I think that is a very narrow minded view about how life works. I think I told him one line that I used after a long time and I love it very much. It says, अगर कोई मुझसे पूछता कि क्या गम है तो मैं बता भी देता, तो जिंदगी पूछती नहीं है यार, दे देती है सीधा. So while that is, it was very philosophical, but in a funny way, I find it very relaxing that there are problems in life. So there is something to ponder. Okay, where is the complexity in the mind that is causing this to happen? Why can't I unravel it or allow it to be uh, to settle down on its own? Can I just relax and do what I can do and then wait? So Rupa, you want to talk a bit about this synchronicity? I don't know why I'm losing the word today, but things that fall on their own, and uh, you've been working to get it and make it simple enough for you to understand. I remember you've taken all kinds of classes yourself and for others, and I'm sure you've gone through a lot of trouble with that. How does simplicity work in that case?
Um, as for synchronicity, I think it happens when it's sort of meant to happen, sort of thing. You can't force synchronicity to happen, is fundamental,
True.
of course. But somewhere it is our level of patience and sitting with it, being comfortable being with it, whatever the issue, whatever the complexity, anything that is not simple enough for you to feel comfortable with, it's just continuing to being with it. I wouldn't say forcing yourself, but being motivated enough that I want this sorted, I have to get to the bottom of this. Like Manoj was saying some time ago, it is just that drivenness which with that, along with patience, would eventually get the synchronicity going in time. But somewhere you pushing it or wanting to expedite that process and get there quicker, abhi mujhe, I want the solution for this, abhi mujhe ye samajhna hai, that doesn't quite work. That sort of works in counter, where it stresses you out, you lose, it ends up you complicating things more rather than simplifying when you stress up more.
Okay.
Because things sort of, they wither away, they fall apart, you can't make sense of life anymore, and everything gets complicated just because you're not in the headspace to assimilate it, or समझने की वो वाली जो क्षमता है, that sort of just falls apart because you're not there, you're not grounded enough, you're not calm enough to get it all together. You have all the resources, but it just doesn't, the jigsaw doesn't fit basically. So somewhere I think it is that sort of engagement, patience, and flowing with the flow eventually gets the synchronicity going and the simplicity just unfolding itself to a great extent.
Barabar. Oh, Manoj, I saw you smiling when Rupa was about to answer, but I want to ask you an added question, then you can add to that. One of the other things that I said this morning, which made him laugh a lot, I said billions of years से दुनिया चल रही है, हम तो नहीं चला रहे यार. तो चल ही रही है ना, तो हमारा प्रॉब्लम क्या है? कुछ इतना सा है, जो भी होगा जब भी होगा सॉल्व हो जाएगा. तो बचपन से इतने सारे आए हैं और इतने सारे चले गए प्रॉब्लम्स. We don't think about them now because they've just gone away. So how does one come to this mind state? When you are in the middle of a very tense situation, we were talking before the podcast, you spoke about a couple of issues that are top of your mind right now because they are consistent, I think, in their problematic way.
Yeah.
How and what do you do to remind yourself to calm down, or what I said in the morning, वो न्यू जनरेशन वाला वर्ड यूज करते हैं यार, चिल कर. So how do you come to this point when things are bad?
I think how is a question that I generally like it only when, it comes to using some new technology, some manual, okay, how-to manual types. Other than, I don't think life has a how-to manual. So वो how to तो आता नहीं है कभी. So I don't understand how to answer this how.
Good one.
But I guess why I was smiling was when she talked about sitting with the problem and when you're uncomfortable with something and what you do. So I just thought of the quote which once came to me. A thought came to me and made it into a quote that, when you can't stand something, try sitting with it.
Sitting on it.
Nice.
The idea, of course, is that you meditate on it and you just sit with it. You stay with that problem, because that's what Einstein had said, that it's not that I'm, more intelligent. I just stay with my problems longer. And when you stay with your problems longer, then, as she said, synchronicities will begin. Things will fall in place because you are in a state of receptivity. You are in a state of alertness. When you're looking for something, only then will you find it. And so, we have this limited span of attention. What it's like a focus light, right? And where we train that focus light is what we will see. So if you're looking for something, after a while you will find it. If I'm not looking for something, I'm not going to find it. As simple as that. And life passes by, and there's so many things that we don't know because we're not looking for it. But it's all around us. That's why I said the interest will determine. And my interest, the degree of my interest will determine, how the probabilities of synchronicity, like how things will really go. Because if I'm really interested, then I will keep looking, and I will have like a part of my attention on that. It's like, you are in a state of relaxed
Alertness.
alertness. Yes. You are there. It's like there is this thing that's always there, and suddenly it strikes you. And very often, what happens is you're looking for a problem, and the answer doesn't come to you when you're actually looking. But then the problem is there inside you now, and you've really understood it, and now you're looking for a solution. And then you go about doing something, and then the solution comes to you out of the blue. It's not out of the blue, actually. Your brain is kind of working. It's like a very complex thing which we don't understand. We don't need to. I don't
No.
need to understand how the car works for me to drive it. I don't need to understand how the computers work for me to, I like the hardware, the part. I don't need to understand. I use it. I mean, a billion people use a smartphone. We don't know what goes on and how it works. It's a wireless device, and it communicates with, like the way we are recording this. We don't need to understand the technology behind it. We just use it.
No.
So likewise, I think we don't need to understand how that thing works, but it works and things fall in place. And we will give it a name of synchronicity, but I think it falls in place because we are kind of tuned to it. It's like, it's like a radio tuner, and we tune to it, so we will find it. So if I'm tuned to something else, I will not find that.
I have a funny take on one of the things, whether the technology is understood by us or not, but in India, if you put it off and put it on again, it works. That much I can guarantee you, no matter how advanced the technology is.
And that's all over the world, Bunty, not
Yeah.
just.
You have to give credit to Bajaj Chetak for that.
Absolutely. So there was this a funny joke. My friend's computer wasn't working this many years back, and I said, "Why don't you put it off and put it on again?" So he says, "It's not your scooter, man. It's not your Bajaj Chetak, actually." That I said, "Try kar kya jayega," and it actually worked. देख भाई टेक्नोलॉजी कोई भी बनाए इंडिया वालों को यूज करने बराबर आता है.
But there is that Anne Lamott quote also, where she said, that everything will work, if you turn it off and turn it on again.
Yeah.
Most of the technologies work, but even humans, like, when you're
Oh,
really,
beautiful.
you just need to turn it off, go to sleep, get up, and then it'll start working.
Wonderful. On a serious note, I had this question when you were, talking about the aspect of how we actually land up understanding that thing when we are not working on it sometimes, or how the solution comes when we are free of the problem for that moment, perhaps. I want to bring up something which is a little parallel to this. So when I had gone to Delhi and had the good fortune to meet Ajahn Jaisaro, so among the meditators, there was a question that came up that he says, whenever I have a problem, I sit down to meditate, and the problem always gets solved. So is that a okay thing to do? So the Ajahn categorically stated that when you are meditating, just sit to meditate. To not have an agenda to it. If you want to do that, it is one of the uses of meditation. You do that separately. But do not make the two coincide with each other again and again. Just keep that separate and do your meditation separately. So, Rupa, my question to you, because of what Manoj said, and I was thinking, only when you are looking do you find it. There is also that bhajan where there is this beautiful line I like. Yakrang is the guy who's written that poetry, whatever that song. And Soch kahe yakrang piya, jin dunda tin paya re. So I guess what he means is that in the heart of hearts, you should know that this is what I'm seeking. There should be no ambiguity or confusion there. But when you actually get it, you are not even looking for it. There is the beauty of simplicity where your answers may not really coincide with what you thought was the answer. The wisdom that is required to realize, okay, so for example, you're unwell and you've been trying different things. Oh, I have a headache and I'm trying this tablet and this thing and that thing and making the room dark or whatever. But once you let go and say, okay, let it be, I cannot resolve it, and just the untensing of the problem kind of relaxes you, and one of the medicines may work or a third thing may work altogether, and We like to know. That's why we like to say this solved the problem or that solved the problem. But sometimes we may not know. How do you look at this simplicity, which is quote unquote free of us? How do you look at it? And again, while Manoj has given the clarification, there is no how to. But as human beings, we are very curious to know, is there a way to bring about this kind of learning in our lives? So anything that you would want to share on these two things?
So yeah, this I sort of encounter on a day-to-day basis because I try
Louder.
to
Your wisdom may
because
be
yeah,
left
because
there.
yeah. Any better?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so I was saying this is something I encounter on a day-to-day basis
Okay.
because of my combining of Ayurveda and homeopathy practice. So
Okay.
people are very unsure. How do you know which one works? You know, I said, what is more important? Is it knowing which one works or getting the problem resolved? Choice is yours. You know, you can choose to take some, not take the other, or prefer one over the other. But if the end goal is healing and getting the healing done quicker than later, then they combine beautifully, then it doesn't matter. So but like you said, it's a very inane human control, wanting control on the knowledge, on the
Yeah.
process, on the outcome. I need to be on top of everything, I need to control everything. That sort of thing can be quite detrimental a lot of the times. There's more it messes you up more than benefits you, is what I think.
Okay.
But I do I agree that it has its place. Having that knowledge and building up on the knowledge, it does have its place, but you can't prioritize that over the bigger picture. And this somehow brings it back beautifully to what Manoj started with about the ghost in the machine, about the higher self, higher wisdom, however you call it, which ultimately knows what's ideal for us and brings it about if we can let it do it. Are wanting this incessant control on wanting the outcome in a certain way, agar ye aisa ho to hi mere liye acha hai, nahi to it is not good, because this is what I have
Planned.
foreseen the path to be. It is that sort of egoistic control, to put it in one way of looking at it, is detrimental overall for your peace of mind, for the process to come to fruition, all of it. But if you just let it be and sort of chill and sort of let the process flow, the higher mind or the higher wisdom finds its best way to get through it. It might be a long windy route, but it will be the most effortless route. The
Oh, wow.
shortest route might be the most complicated routes. So it's our understanding of the limited finite mind isn't as vast or as deep as the higher wisdom's approach to life. Does that make sense?
Wow. It was beautiful. Unfortunately, my mind runs riot on the questions and the stories and so many things that connect very fast. So by the time you come to the end of your answer, I've forgotten which question should I really ask. But there was a nascent question that seemed very interesting, which I was thinking that Manoj is going to say that this is a separate topic. How do you bring this in here? So let me just contemplate on that a bit. So the idea of letting go and the idea of control are contrarian. In one more way is what I just realized today for the first time. So when you say be in the present, in the here and the now, the idea of control says she used a line because in the past it has worked, something like that. So because control comes from what I know, and what I know is the past. For sure. Okay. Every time I speak to Manoj and Rupa, the voice decibel comes down. So it's already a mental note. Nahi, I should tell you next time, be a little aware and figure out your audio before. Already that fear and the doubt is already there. It may be well meant. I'm not saying it's always wrong, but the fear is already coming. Oh, we should work on this a bit or whatever. Whereas being in the here and the now is beneficial also because of the fact that then you are able to allow the simplicity or the synchronicity to happen. Today I'm going to work on this. That is a wonderful problem to have. So, do you think that is an added benefit of why one should try and be present and work on? Because then that allows you to be little less loaded about the problem. While you did say that how to's are not guaranteed to work every time, and that's why you would rather stay away from them. But if one is trying to say, okay, let us sit down and work on the problem as it appears now, um, do you want to talk a little bit about this connection?
So you're saying that consciously try to be uh, present.
Mindful as
Mm.
much as possible, because otherwise you think, oh, why be mindful? What's the big deal? Memories are there, and these are very strong emotions that we have about our past or future concerns.
Mm.
So very often we do not have rational reasons to explain to someone if we are talking and there is a debater. These are good things to say, but how would you know? Every time I worked with this client, they've always delayed the payment or not worked properly, or they are very uh, sure that they want it this way. But very often we realize that it changes. Like if you come in my place and write something and the client suddenly says, oh, I love this, I've always wanted this. And then I'm saying, like 20 years you've been working with me, you never told me. But I've become fixated upon what I think that the client wants. It's not my writing necessarily. So in that sense, I'm saying, uh,
Yes, I guess we kind of unintentionally project our biases, onto people and circumstances. Uh, and those biases, of course, come from our past experiences, memories, whatever. And so, yes, I guess what you're asking me, the simple response to that is that being in the present and dealing with whether it's a person or it's a problem, dealing with it as on the merits of what is happening right now, definitely has a lot more potential then for it to go in the direction that it ideally should. And I'm not saying therefore from the point of view of control, because when you're really and truly present, then you're not trying to control the outcome. When
can you
you're
repeat that?
when you're truly in the present, you're not trying to control the outcome of your whatever direction you want a conversation to go, or deal to go through, or whatever else. I mean, you don't trying to control life then you are, because you're in the now and you're really intensely in the present moment. uh, the very fact that you're really present simply means that there is no past or future for you.
True.
There is no time for you. You are in the now, and now is outside of time. And the moment you're in that space, in that now, where you're free of time and free of the past and the future, you are really you're in a state of complete acceptance, and the solutions tend to come, but you are not so hung up on this is how it should work out and this is the only way I would like. So there's this, when Rupa was talking, I just remembered about, like, there's this meme that used to be floating around. I don't know, I've not seen it recently, but it was a pretty nice one. I used to love it. It used to be like a person sitting in a meditative pose, and it would say, relax, nothing is under control.
Yeah, you
Right?
mentioned.
I thought it's pretty wise, because you need to know that nothing is in your control. It isn't.
Mm.
We like to kind of go with the belief that it is, but nothing is in your control. We're trying to constantly bring things in life in your control, but you know that it's not.
Oh, wow. So, a last question for you. We started with Manoj. Rupa, the last question is, his last answer reeks of freedom. Uh, what do you think is the connection between freedom and simplicity, or the other way around? How do you How do you see it? I have a lot of answers running in my head, but how do you see it, or any experiences that you want to share?
Yeah, for me, I personally believe freedom is one of those top requirements for any life, maybe
I
human
can't
or
hear you at
animal.
all, Rupa.
So yeah, I personally believe freedom is the top requirement for any life, human or animal. And without freedom, the rest of the life just falls apart, because there is no you. If you have no freedom to be you, there is no you. There is no life. There is no living that life without the freedom. And yeah, if you're free to being just your authentic self and doing what you were meant to be at that point in time, because you have the choice of freedom to do whatever you want, um, life will automatically simplify itself. There is no need to complicate it, because you're following what's close to your heart at that point in time for that issue or that thing that you're dealing with. And the complication happens when you are not yourself and you're trying to appease somebody else or do somebody else's bidding. And that's where the complication starts, where you are not just living life out for yourself. So I had never made the connection until you brought it together like that. But yes, living a free life is a simple life.
And the other way around, I guess.
And the other way around too, yes. A simple life will be a free life.
So, may I add that living in the now itself is about um, living authentically. The only way to live authentically is to actually be free of the past and the future.
And the future.
And so there was no defined self that sense.
Yeah.
Like there is no set self, because then the control comes. This is how I am, so I need to adhere to that thing, and I need to, get. So your wants also are more like in the flow, in the sense that what I want is what life wants. I am in that flow.
What a lovely line. I want what life wants. I'm copying that on my status now. Thank you.
Freedom.
This has
That's what
turned
I
out to.
feel. Freedom
Sorry.
is that is what freedom is.
Yeah.
What I want and what life wants are aligned, then that is really true freedom.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's been a lovely chat. I thought we were meandering in the first 2-3 questions. I was unsure, but I think it's just kind of done a good circle of questions and answers and realizations, and some stories there. Wonderful. We should connect again and thoda or. So I had this one question to ask Rupa before I end. So detrimental को हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं?
I'll get my Hindi dictionary on that.
तो ये हमारे दर्शकों के लिए भी एक सवाल है. What is detrimental called in Hindi? We shall all do our homeworks till the next episode comes up.
Is it Hanikarak or something like that, I think?
Could be.
I guess.
Is
Could be.
dangerous, na?
हाँ, हमारे लिए हानिकारक है.
हमारे लिए.
Good. सोचना ही बंद कर दिया हमने तो. बहुत बढ़िया. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
We shall get together again, and hopefully Hemant will be free soon, and we shall have his views on certain things as well.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
It was a simple and a free conversation today. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
See you guys.
Thank you, Roopa. Thank you.
Yeah.